Welcome back to Raid Guides in a Trenchcoat featuring Arcadian M4 Savage, Wicked Thunder.
This is nothing personal, but I must have your
Little soul!
People are going to look back in history and wonder about the surge of brony activity in August 2024, and it's all going to be this bitch's fault. Thylight Sparkle over here rounds out the light heavyweight tier as a witch so coven-coded that every vigilante, deputy, and prosecutor already knows what they're trying to do with her once day 2 rolls around. Which is unfortunate for them since they're not going to live through the night. Type BGM 100 and then we're back to the autos and raid-wide formula after a whole tier of not getting that, and then the first mechanic is Wicked Thunder brandishing her own Dawn Trail EX wings that we're still about 18 months shy of seeing in the Mog Station. Line up between the lasers of her wings while also avoiding all 4 timelines worth of MCU Power Stones. They'll have to be in either the front or back half of each tile, and more or less between these 2 dots on your respective side. Then run out range far, melee close, as some of these lightning lines will start to glow, and the power stones will once again force a front or back half tile moment. Generally speaking, north to south, that's range DPS, tanks, melee DPS, and then healers. Either the supports of the DPS are going to get stepped on by Mommy Lightning's Thunder Thighs, leaving the rest of you wanting. Though gone are the days of Shiva's Extreme where only one person gets stepped on in the course of the fight, because this time, everyone else will have the chance to redeem themselves and have their own moment of being crushed so long as they follow Mommy's instructions. Check out the hashtag Garlean glyph that she summons where this denotes way out, and this denotes not so far out. If you still need to be stepped on, obey, and if you have this forked lightning debuff, then disobey, but still don't go close to anyone. With the first mechanic down, assume clock spot positions with ranges that enter cardinals, and then Wicked Thunder will start throwing Garlean gang signs like a Naruto fangirl ninja one trick. There are 4 patterns here, and you'll first need to figure out if you have a normal or cursed variant. The gang signs always alternate, so you either get way out, not so, way out, not so, or not so, way out, not so, way out. You'll also be getting a cast bar of either widening witch hunt or narrowing witch hunt, and if the gang sign alliterates with the cast bar, then you get a happy pattern. But if you're starting way out in a narrowing pattern, then you're almost certainly going to be getting your steps in. In a normal pattern, everyone maintains uptime and each pairing of melee, range, tank, and healers needs to bait an attack, starting with your supports and then your DPS. Ranges are responsible for the way outs, and melees are responsible for the not-sos. So for way out widening, healers go far out while everyone is out of the hitbox, then tanks go near while everyone stays inside of the hitbox, then ranges, then melees. If it was not so and narrowing, then the tanks would start. In a normal pattern, you really don't need to move very much unless you're the one baiting. This is not the case, however, in a cursed non-alliterative pattern. If you're getting a narrowing pattern with a way out gang sign, then everyone needs to clump up right under her except for the healers who are still responsible for the way out bait. Then everyone else scatters as far as they can as the tanks are left hugging the hitbox for the near bait. Then ranges, then melees. After a couple of wipes to that, focus up for a raid wide right into Electrope Edge 1. Stand on the cardinals and ignore the laser beams completely. The only 2 that are going to matter are the last 2 cast because there's this whole priority of these Electrope shards getting hit by lasers and counting and shit, but all you really need to know is that whichever rock on the east gets hit 3rd is not safe, and whichever rock gets hit 3rd on the west side is safe. Couple that with a half room cleave from N4S and you'll have only one quadrant that you can go to. But there's one more mechanic hidden behind the flood of light that Square Enix uses to censor the boss's balls. Much like Syndra from League of Legends, Wicked Thunder will have several purple orbs floating around her. 4 balls means stack, and 8 balls means spread. The positions are pretty specific, but inscribed on the back of a Bloons TD6 Operation Darkstorm fighter jet, boss relative, it'll look something like this. Resolve EE1, the tank will deal with a narrow line tank buster, and then it's back to clocks for EE2. Common Core Mathematics meets the Electric Company in this counting exercise where sometimes you get a random extra number just because. You'll get a purple debuff with a short 22 or long 42-second timer, which is going to start tracking how many times you get hit, just like how Spotify tracks the number of times you listen to Baby Shark unironically. In 4 pulses, the boss is going to hit you all with lasers where you'll need to count how many times you get hit, and if you're one of the long timers, you'll need to arbitrarily add 1 to your total. Now Wicked Thunder will cast this smiley face, anchor, malformed penis looking shape with a new 5x5 grid on the ground. Long timers will need to find this little cutout square in the middle of a side, which is the short timers' new relative north for the mechanic. The short timer players will run DPS relative east, support relative west, and the 2 count players will need to explode into small squares here in the second row, while the 3 count players are going to need to detonate massive rectangular nukes in the back corners. I know what you're thinking, and all squares are rectangles, you uneducated Garlean sympathizer. After the first round of explosions, the boss will do another floating orbs mechanic, and this one really strikes that max melee PTSD that I tend to bring up every video. Luckily, my good friend taught me a trick to deal with the tanks' lack of personal space bubbles, which I'll be sure to share with you all. Your timer length and your counts dictate your priorities here. If the boss has an 8-ball spread pattern, I'll put your static spots on the screen right now. Very static, much wow. Do that pattern on the half of the arena that she isn't cleaving, and the mechanic will solve itself. Now, if it's a 4-ball partners pattern, that's where things start to get really dicey. Fuck your relative north and snap back to true north, where your 2-stack supports will both be at the northmost max melee spot, the 3-stack supports will go to the southmost, the 3-stack DPS will go to whichever of the east or west max melee spots isn't getting cleaved, and the 2-stack DPS huddle up right in the very center of the hitbox. Now, the 2-stack DPS have a chance to get Venn diagrammed from every possible angle of greed here, and as a result need to make sure that they are as close to that center pixel as possible to accommodate. But with all of the particle effects plaguing your retinas, it can be a little hard to make sure you haven't crossed over the center line into ass-clapping territory. So what I like to do is hit the home button to enter into first person mode, where I can ilm myself right up to the line and pray to Null Doll for the rest. Once the balls mechanic goes off, the anchor will return and the long timer players get their time to shine like Chernobyl, while the short timer players huddle up at relative north. Once again, because you're getting hit by the ball's lightning mechanic, you needed to add 1 to the number of lasers you were hit by at the start of the mechanic. Long timer 1 does not exist. Shortly thereafter, you'll have to group up for a party stack followed by a crossroom laser thicker than hell in par. Watch the little hitbox nipples and veer towards whichever one rotates onto the stage to avoid the incoming 3-hit KO.
My ring!
Look to the ionic cloud surrounding you, which will either be blue or yellow, and Wicked Thunder then brings out her 2 favorite guns, Shock and Awe, to deliver unto you your misfortune. Split yourselves to the lasers opposite your ion cloud's color. Station your tanks in the front of the wild charge, and then watch for one of 5 different buffs. Eye of the Storm, just the Storm, Target Partner, Target Pen Pal, and Masochist. Take note of your buff, and then you'll have to stand on or near one of these tiny and barely distinguishable rivets in the floor, while a rainbow rave of 2-minute burst particle effects makes it impossible to see any of them. That said, the only 6 that matter will make this high school graffiti-esque looking shape. Storm debuffs will either be all donut or all AoE, and boss relative, your DPS stands on the right rivet here, while the support stands on the left rivet there. The masochistic targetee then takes the middle rivet, and the pen pal or partner targetor will just stand inside this little triangle formation as close to their partner as they can. You do this formation regardless of the pattern, so that if it's a partner target, the cleave will just hit your buddy right next to you, and if it's pen pal target, then the 2 cleaves split the center of the arena while still hitting nobody more than once. Heal up, and then you'll have to do this whole laser ordeal 2 more times. Make sure that you're still on the opposite color, check your buff, and assume the position like boomers assume gender. After 3 rounds of this, the arena is restored, the tank takes a big boy buster on the edge, and you all group up on the intercardinals with tanks and ranged DPS in the south, while healers and melee DPS take the north. Type BGM 50 just that you can BGM 100 again, and we'll enter into transition. Obvious telegraph proteans are obvious, and you'll have to bounce back and forth between the safe areas as Wicked Thunder feverishly begins rubbing her box for some electric stimulation. After a few of these strikes, you'll hit either all the support or all the DPS with these big AoEs that you'll want to be spread out for, and then on the very next protean, whoever didn't get hit needs to rush forward to play Get Down, Mr. President. Grab Lincoln and JFK off the floor as the boss monologues and prepare to repeat the sequence. Unleash the most chaotic potted burst window while weaving both skills and movement until you all group up center to get flung from the arena. Thunder Thighs then appears with the new tickling tentacles that she sewed onto her fursuit to declare that this is where your battle truly begins, blissfully unaware of the 6 minutes that have already transpired since the pull began. Hope your dumbass isn't running 2 Pictomancers, because you'll have needed to generate your LB3 or saved no less than all of your mitigation and healing, as the boss becomes targetable to unleash an unrelenting assault of tentacle strikes that last longer than an insurance agent making love to his wife. Then, because you aren't allowed even a second's respite, about a dozen exaflares land on the field, and you need to split Light Party 1 west and Light Party 2 east. Find the row where the outer exaflare pair are both heading away from your side, then after the first strike, walk into the safe zone while getting slapped with a Light Party stack multiple times over. Wicked Thunder will follow this with either 2 in tentacles or a flaming scimitar sidestep combo. Avoid the attack and then group up with your team as your tanks take their rightful spots in front to claim the upcoming tethers for Mustard Bomb. Spread out one to a tile with your melees in the front lane and DPS in the side lanes so that 4 of you can get hit by large AoEs while the tanks are given debuffs and passable mustard bombs. You'll need to catch up with the 2 players who weren't debuffed to pass the bomb along where Tank 1 relishes in condemning the leftmost unbuffed player, and Tank 2 barbecues the rightmost. Heal them up, and then Wicked Thunder really begins to show off her new fursuit by charging her tails with either fire or water. It'll always be 2 of the same element, and the Holy Water sees you getting knocked away from these red light districts, while the Cleansing Fire would see you purged as contaminants. Resolve the tentacle in the order they appeared, raid wide, and then succumb to that Saturday Night Fever with the first of 3 Sabbaths. Twilight Sabbath requires that you group up in the center to bait some puddles while watching for more clones in their Sidewinder Lego brick storms. Find the 2 descending Eucrasian Diagnosis looking rings that are lower than the others, as these will denote the first pair. Find the quadrant safe from cleaves, and then immediately look at the other 2 because you're going to have about a half a second before they start going off with another Twin Tails or Flaming Scimitar to boot. Continuing on into our long weekend, you'll then immediately be thrust into Midnight Sabbath, where healers and ranges pair up in the back while tanks and melees pair up in the front. Generally speaking, your priority is an intercardinal, and then the cardinal directly counterclockwise of you. Even more clones descend upon the battlefield, where either the cardinals or intercardinals will descend first, and for each grouping you'll need to group up on it if it's a biblically abridged angel, or avoid it on your other priority spot if it's a communist manifested arms dealer. All of this is also combined with a partner stack or partner spread mechanic dictated by the boss's active cast. Scattered burst means spread for the first clone and stack for the second clone, while concentrated burst is the opposite. Take the first set of clones, then the second set, then sides or center again, then raid wide, and then finally take note of the order for the fire or water mechanic and hold on to it for the next minute and a half as we enter into Chain Lightning. I'm not going to lie to you, I was a lot more excited when I thought she was saying drown my foes in cunts rather than drown my foes in cuts. Snoo Snoo is real, and that would have been a mechanic I could get behind dying to over and over. Split off into your light parties as Watem fumbles his 3rd engagement. Form up to take the incoming sword towers with tanks as your line leaders, followed by the melees, then the healers, and finally the ranges. Now you'll proceed to yell over each other in your voice comms as Wicked Thunder telegraphs a ton of upcoming safe spots in rapid succession by hitting 3 of your 4 associated swords with lightning bolts. She'll telegraph on one side, then the other, and back and forth, giving each side a sequence of 4 numbers that are rarely, if ever, matching. Huddle up in your first safe spot, and while you cannot outrun lightning, you sure as hell can out-sprint it. Dodge all 4 hits and then check your short-term memory at the door as the fire or water tentacle tails resolve themselves. You'll then get another mustard bomb, another tails telegraph, and then pray to whichever sadistic god you follow that you've done enough damage to skip Rise, or else it's time to subject yourself to the Sunrise Sabbath. There's 2 prevailing stratagems for the Sunrise Sabbath, and neither of them are sunset in stone. You've got either AutoCAD or MS Paint, and while AutoCAD is a much more consistent strategy in practice, that doesn't mean that some people can't make MS Paint work. I mean, Pirate Software's been doing it for ages. You get the blue and yellow ion auras from Phase 1 again, along with a certain length of timer. The long timer 32-second players will ignore their buffs to deal with the towers mechanic, and the short 17-second timers will focus on griefing their party. The towers are the easy part as 6 clones appear into the arena, and much like the entries on a food nutrition label, you get to ignore 66% of them. The only 2 you care about will be the winged ones, who will either be locked into the most intense staring contest imaginable denoting east and west tower spawns, or turned away from one another, avoiding eye contact like they just slept with each other's therapists, which leads to north and south tower spawns. The 2 long DPS would take north or east, and supports would take south or west. Soak your tower by standing as close to the edge as you can in range, because if you blink, the tower will appear, explode, and take you all along with it. The towers are solved the same way regardless of strat, but the other 4 players with short debuffs vary wildly in strategy depending on which paste bin you're pretending that you're following. For the sake of this guide, we're only going to follow the AutoCAD strategy because that's what I have footage for, but also because it generally saves me the embarrassment of accidentally running into the death wall. The short debuff players will start with the DPS looking into the northeast and the support looking to the northwest to find the first railgun with a color opposite your orbiting aura. If the first clone is the same color as yours, DPS will continue to look clockwise and supports will continue to look counterclockwise. Head to the waymark nearest your assigned clone and then figure out where the towers are going to spawn and stand in your outermost edge of the waymark closest to that tower. That is to say that if the towers are east-west, you'll be standing on these vertical lines, and if the towers are north-south, you'll be standing on the horizontal lines. You'll need to stand precisely on the center of the correct line as soon as possible so that all the lasers shoot through the middle of the map and ever so slightly miss everybody. If you're slow, then tonight, you'll be the one to bleed red, blue, and green. So all this happens as the short debuffs resolve, and then you'll get another of the middle or sides lasers, followed by the exact same mechanic but swapping the roles around. Those without a debuff take the towers, and the rapidly ticking long debuffs take the lasers. Follow that with the stored fire or water tentacles from fucking ages ago, and now you're in the home stretch. Sword Quiver is the final pre-enrage mechanic where Wicked Thunder will begin slicing lines into the floor like she's trying to draw up all the asterisks needed to fuel the profanity filters that both of your healers are going to be pinging up against shortly. This creates 6 possible safe zones as you consider everything between the lines, which gets truncated down to 4 as the boss crosses out 2 of them. Pair off like in Midnight Sabbath with the melees in the front safe spot and ranges in the back safe spots, and then prepare to receive the Proteans. Heal up, and you'll do this twice more, which I suppose is only enough to censor a single or Keep shaving away this canonically Makote Kitty's health bar while you dodge the last of the lines, and congrats! You've completed M4S and the Arcadian Light Heavyweight Savage tier. And now that rewards are about to be unlocked, you'll be able to run it as many times as it takes for your team to receive enough mono wheels to craft a set of roller skates. Or blades. Roller blades. Go watch a real guide.